He was publicly humiliated and fired, told he didn't belong in fine dining because of the color of his skin. But Mark Johnson didn't give up. He fought back, rebuilding his career with resilience and grace. When the restaurant that wronged him began to collapse under its toxic manager, Mark returned with one condition. This time, he would be in charge. What happened next will shock you. Let's start from the beginning. Mark Johnson, a 24-year-old with a radiant smile and an unshakable passion for hospitality, had long dreamed of working at a top-tier restaurant. When he landed a job at Elegance, one of the city's most renowned fine dining establishments, he couldn't contain his excitement. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and perfectly polished shoes, Mark walked into his first day with his head held high, eager to prove himself. He envisioned learning from the best, crafting unforgettable dining experiences, and one day, becoming a manager himself. But his optimism was soon tempered by the presence of Paul Ryan, the restaurant's manager. Paul, a middle-aged man with a tailored suit and a sharp tone, exuded authority. From the moment they met, Paul's disdain for Mark was thinly veiled. "I see you've got energy," he said during their first conversation, his eyes scanning Mark as though he didn't belong. "Let's hope you can keep up in this environment." Over the weeks that followed, Paul's microaggressions turned into outright hostility. He would criticize Mark's every move, nitpicking details like how he polished the silverware or addressed customers. "That's not how it's done here," Paul would snap, even when Mark followed the exact instructions he'd been given. While Mark's co-workers tried to reassure him that Paul was harsh on everyone, it was clear that Mark bore the brunt of Paul's disdain. One particularly busy evening, the restaurant was buzzing with the energy of a packed house. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of classical music filled the room. Mark, juggling multiple tables, mistakenly served a $120 filet mignon to the wrong customer. Realizing his error, he immediately corrected it and apologized to both parties, hoping the situation would quietly resolve. But Paul, always watching, saw the mistake unfold. He stormed across the floor, his face flushed with anger. "Johnson!" he barked, loud enough to silence the clinking of cutlery. All eyes turned to them. "What do you think you're doing?" Mark tried to explain, his voice steady but apologetic. "I made a mistake, sir. It's already fixed." "Fixed?" Paul interrupted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Do you think this is some fast food joint where mistakes don't matter? This is fine dining. Perfection isn't optional, it's required. Clearly you don't belong here." The words stung like a slap. Mark felt the heat of embarrassment rise in his cheeks as diners whispered and staff exchanged uneasy glances. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan. It won't happen again," Mark said, his voice trembling but sincere. But Paul wasn't done. "Sorry doesn't cut it. Pack your things. You're done here." He dismissed Mark with a wave of his hand, leaving the young waiter standing frozen in shock as the room fell silent. With his heart pounding and humiliation flooding through him, Mark removed his apron and walked toward the staff room to gather his belongings. Whispers followed him, but no one dared speak out against Paul. As Mark exited the restaurant for the last time, the cold night air hit him like a wall. He took a deep breath, gripping the strap of his bag, vowing silently that this would not be the end of his story. Determined not to let one humiliating incident define him, Mark Johnson embraced the setback as a stepping stone rather than a defeat. He took on jobs at smaller, family-owned restaurants across the city, each with its own challenges, but also opportunities to grow. At a cozy Italian bistro, he learned the nuances of pairing wine with entrees, earning the respect of the head chef for his attention to detail. At a bustling diner, he mastered multitasking and built strong connections with regular customers. Everywhere he worked, Mark brought more than just his skills. He brought a spirit of collaboration and positivity. In time, his natural leadership began to shine. Colleagues looked up to him for guidance, impressed by his ability to keep calm under pressure and his unwavering commitment to excellence. Mark didn't just focus on his own success, he uplifted those around him. If a new hire struggled, Mark was the first to step in with patient advice or lend a hand. His kindness and work ethic earned him the nickname Coach among co-workers. Managers often praised his knack for creating a welcoming and cohesive team environment. Unbeknownst to Mark, his former employer, Elegance, was experiencing turbulence. Sophia Green, the restaurant's owner, was growing increasingly concerned about the state of her once thriving establishment. Sophia had built Elegance with the vision of it being not just a culinary icon, but also a workplace where creativity and professionalism flourished. However, recent trends told a different story: high staff turnover, waning morale, and a decline in customer satisfaction. Sophia started paying closer attention, listening to staff and customers more intently. The name Paul Ryan frequently surfaced, mentioned not with admiration but with unease. Employees described his relentless criticism and demoralizing behavior, while regular patrons noted the tension that seemed to pervade the restaurant's atmosphere. One evening, as Sophia lingered near the bar during dinner service, she overheard a conversation between a loyal customer and one of the servers. "You know," the customer said, leaning in confidentially, "it's not the same without that young man. Mark, I think his name was. He had a way of making everyone feel welcome, like they were the only ones in the room." The server nodded in agreement. "Mark was one of the best we had. He made us all better, honestly. It's a shame how Paul treated him. He didn't deserve it." Sophia's curiosity was piqued. She made a mental note to look into Mark Johnson and the circumstances of his departure. Something about the way the staff spoke of him, with genuine admiration, stayed with her. If Mark was as talented and inspiring as they said, perhaps he was exactly the kind of person Elegance needed to turn things around. Months later, the atmosphere at Elegance was tense as it prepared for one of its most critical evenings, an event featuring top food critics who could make or break the restaurant's reputation. The stakes were high, and the pressure revealed cracks that had long been growing under Paul Ryan's leadership. His harsh treatment of staff had driven morale to an all-time low, and in the days leading up to the event, several key team members walked out, unwilling to endure his behavior any longer. Sophia Green was panicked. Elegance had been her dream, her legacy, but now it teetered on the brink of collapse. She had poured her heart into making it a beacon of culinary excellence, but Paul's toxic management was unraveling everything. Desperate to salvage the situation, Sophia racked her brain for a solution. That's when she remembered the name that had come up again and again in her conversations with staff and customers: Mark Johnson. Determined, Sophia set out to find Mark. She tracked him down to a rising gastropub, where he had become a trusted shift leader. When she arrived, she saw Mark in action, coaching his team with warmth and authority, ensuring every plate left the kitchen perfectly presented. It was clear he had grown since his time at Elegance. Sophia introduced herself, her tone earnest. "Mark, I made a mistake letting Paul run my restaurant unchecked. I've heard nothing but praise about you. Your work ethic, your leadership. Elegance needs you now more than ever." Mark hesitated. The humiliation he'd endured at Elegance was still fresh in his memory. "Sophia, I appreciate what you're saying, but going back there isn't something I take lightly. I need to know this would be a fair environment, not the hostile one I left." Sophia's face softened. "You have my word, Mark. Paul's leadership has done more harm than good, and I intend to correct that. If you're willing, I'd like you to lead the team, on your terms." Mark paused, then spoke firmly. "I'll help, but only if Paul is no longer in charge. I can't build a team under someone who tears it apart." Sophia didn't hesitate. She had seen enough to know Mark was right. That evening, she relieved Paul of his duties and offered Mark the role of interim manager. With just days to prepare, Mark took charge, assembling a team that was battered but willing to trust his leadership. His approach was transformative. Mark began by meeting with each staff member individually, listening to their grievances and rebuilding their confidence. He fostered a sense of unity and purpose, rallying the team to deliver their best. During the event, his calm demeanor and clear guidance turned chaos into harmony. Plates flowed smoothly from the kitchen to the dining room, and the once tense atmosphere was replaced with a sense of pride and collaboration. The critics noticed. Their reviews raved not only about the food, but also about the impeccable service and the welcoming atmosphere. One critic wrote, "Elegance lives up to its name not just in its cuisine, but in its spirit." The experience was seamless, led by a team that radiated passion and professionalism. By the end of the night, Sophia watched the team celebrating, their laughter filling the restaurant. She approached Mark with a smile. "You didn't just save this event, Mark. You've reminded me what elegance was supposed to stand for. Thank you." Mark, though exhausted, felt a sense of fulfillment. He had turned his pain into purpose and proven that with the right leadership, even the most fractured team could achieve greatness. Impressed by Mark's performance, Sophia offered him the permanent role of general manager. Under Mark's leadership, Elegance transformed into a thriving restaurant with a supportive workplace culture. Former employees who had left because of Paul began returning, eager to work with Mark again. One evening, Paul returned to the restaurant as a customer. Seeing Mark as the manager was a shock. Mark approached his former boss, extending a polite greeting and offering excellent service. When Paul muttered an insincere apology for his past behavior, Mark simply smiled and replied, "Thank you, Paul. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow." Mark's journey from humiliation to success became an inspiration to his community, proving that resilience, talent, and kindness could overcome even the most entrenched biases.